Hi, I'm Angela H. Brown, Executive Director of Craft Lake City. Today we're producing fun science videos for Utah students at schools in partnership with Google Fiber.
Hi, I'm Brooke Funk. I teach at Granger High School. I teach biology, and I'm really excited to be doing this demonstration of photosynthesis for Craft Lake City. So we'll be talking about photosynthesis today and the 3 materials that plants need to do photosynthesis. To do photosynthesis, plants need 3 things. One of the things they need is a light source. And so to simulate the sunlight, in our lab we're using this light bulb. It's a 100-watt daylight bulb, so it's kind of a more powerful light than a regular light bulb. They also need some water, so we have some water here. And then they also need a carbon source. Now usually plants use the carbon in the air. They use the carbon dioxide that's all over in the air. They have plenty of carbon dioxide in the air. But since we're putting the plants in the water, they're not going to have access to that air. So we're going to add some baking soda, which will give them a carbon source inside of the water that they can use to do photosynthesis. We're going to have our experimental group and our control group. Our experimental group is going to have that carbon source in it. In our other glass, this is our control group. We tested if they could do the photosynthesis without carbon. The first thing we got to do is we've got to create a source of carbon and water. So we're going to add some distilled water to these beakers. We'll need some distilled water. And we're going to go for about 200 milliliters. It's just a couple inches of water in a beaker or a plastic cup. You don't have to have a beaker, you can just have a plastic cup. And then we're going to add some carbon dioxide to our glasses here, because plants need carbon dioxide to do photosynthesis. So we're just going to put some baking soda in there. Normally there's carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, in the air, but since we're going to be putting our plants in water, we're going to just add the carbon source to the water there. We also are going to add a little bit of dish soap. The dish soap will help the carbon get into the leaves and just kind of let the carbon get into the pores of the leaves so that they can do photosynthesis. We're going to add it to both cups because we're going to try to keep this a controlled experiment. So we now have our experimental cup, which has a carbon source and dish soap. And we have our control cup, which just has the dish soap and water. There's lots of different leaves you can use for this experiment. I prefer to use spinach because it's really got a lot of fleshy parts to it. You want to make sure you have a kind of wide leaf that has a lot of fleshy, not super veiny parts there. And then we can get little, what we call leaf chads, little circles or little discs, using a hole punch. And we just want about 20. So we'll get about 20 of these. So we're going to take the leaf chads, the little leaves here, and these are going to be the little guys that actually do the photosynthesis. But yeah, you can also use a straw if you don't have a little hole punch too. Just punch out little leaf chads, little circles of leaves. And we're going to be putting those guys in here to do the photosynthesis. There we go. Now we've got to get the carbon inside of the leaves, because inside the little leaf chads there's little pores, and that's where the air normally goes into with the carbon in it. But they're going to be underwater, so they're not going to have that air source. So we're going to try and get the carbon into the leaf chads. So we're going to put it in this little syringe. For this cup, we're going to take the water with the carbon, and we're going to just suck up some of that water, shake it a bit to get all the leaves down there, and then we will get all of the air out of that by just slowly going like that. Now, we're going to try to get these leaves to sink because we're going to try to pull the air that's already inside of the leaves out, and we're going to try to replace it with our carbon water. And so I'm just going to hold it, and I'm going to pull down with my thumb over the syringe hole there, and I'm going to pull down and shake as I go. And then I'm going to push up, and let's see, no leaves fell that time. Sometimes it takes 3 or 4 times. I might have a little bit too much soap in here, but there we go. So a few of them are starting to sink there. We might need to do it one more time because we have a stubborn leaf there at the top, but that's okay. And one more time. And there they all go. So this was my carbon water, so I'm going to put it back in the carbon cup with my leaves. And now I got to do the same thing with my non-carbon water. So I'm going to take some leaves here, leaf chads, add them to it. And then I'm going to do the same thing, but with my non-carbon water, so my no carbon water. So now same exact thing. All right. I'm just see if I can get them to sink. This is the part that a lot of people struggle with, is getting the leaves to sink. My students struggle with this part, so it's okay if you have a struggle. Let's do it one more time to see if we can get that last little stubborn one done. And if you do have a stubborn one that just won't sink, you could always just take it out of the experiment so you don't have to redo it over and over. Okay, so I put those guys in there. And now I'm going to take out any leaves that are currently floating because we want to start with all of them at the bottom, which it looks like they are. And then from there, we put them under the light source. And we want them the exact same distance away from the lights so that they're getting equal sunlight, you could say. And this could take about 15 minutes. But what's going to happen is now the plants are going to start doing photosynthesis if they have their carbon source and their water source and their sunlight. So just kind of a reminder of what we did. We took the air out of the leaf chads so that they could sink, because normally they'd be too buoyant. The air would make them a lot less dense than the water and they would float on top. But we took the air out of the leaves and we sunk them, and some of one of our beakers had a carbon source. We put some baking soda in there. We should start being able to see little oxygen bubbles that will start to form. And as the oxygen bubbles start to form, it'll start gathering on the sides of the little leaves, and it'll start making them float. So you're going to start making them lighter as they get oxygen. These ones over here, since they don't have a carbon source, they should not be doing photosynthesis, so they should not be creating oxygen, and so they should stay sunk. You should have a chart where you can count every minute how many leaves are floating in each cup, and at the end you should be able to see which cups had leaves that did more photosynthesis. And we would hope it would be this one because they have the carbon source. But sometimes they're a little slow to start. It usually takes about 5 minutes to start, and then after that you start to see them start to float. What the plants are doing is they're going to be taking the light energy and they're going to be using that to convert that carbon dioxide into into sugars, and sugars are what the plants use as their food source, so it's their food. Just like us, we need the sugars and they need the sugars to grow and to stay alive, and so they are taking that carbon and creating sugars during photosynthesis. Another product of photosynthesis is oxygen, and so they're also creating oxygen gas, and that is what is actually causing the leaves to rise. We can't actually see the sugars. There's no way to see the sugar inside of the plant, but we can see the oxygen begin to form because it'll start to bubble out of the leaf chads, and it'll cause them to become more buoyant, and it'll cause them to rise, which is why they're rising. So plants, when they create this oxygen gas, they need the oxygen gas too. They need it to use their sugar and to live. But we also need the oxygen gas to live and break down our food. We use the oxygen gas to break down our food. So this oxygen created by plants and other organisms that do photosynthesis is actually really important for our planet, for the Earth, because organisms use the oxygen made during photosynthesis to stay alive. Look, there's another one. There it goes. Oh, there's one over here too. So if we count what we have going on now, I count 1, 2, 3, 4 leaf chads that have risen because of the oxygen bubbles. Oh, here comes a 5th one right now. And on this side, there are no leaf chads that I can see that are floating. And that's good. That's good. They shouldn't be doing photosynthesis. They don't have a carbon source, whereas these guys have a carbon source. One of the things a lot of people kind of get confused about is they think that plants get their food from the ground. They think they get it from the soil and that they can take food up through their roots. And that's actually not the case. Plants don't need to get their food from the ground. Plants can create their own food doing photosynthesis. All they need to do that is water, sunlight, and carbon dioxide and a carbon source. And so this lab really shows us, here's what happens with the carbon source, and here's what would happen without the carbon source. They need that carbon source to do photosynthesis. I've had students that decide to use different colors of light, and you could see which colors of light do photosynthesis the best. Some students have tried food coloring where they use different drops of food coloring to change the color of the water. We've done one where we use warm water versus cold water. A few students want to try to use soda as the carbon source. That doesn't really tend to work out very well. There's lots of things you could do with this lab to kind of experiment with to see if I do this, will I have more photosynthesis or faster photosynthesis? Look at that. I think that is our last little leaf chad floating to the top. There he goes. Super fun. Here we are, we're done with our experiment, our little lab, and you can see in our carbon cup we have all of our leaf chads have floated to the top because of the oxygen gas that was formed during photosynthesis. And in our non-carbon cup, we only have one little leaf that decided to float. He just wanted to do photosynthesis so bad, but all of the rest of them are down at the bottom because they were unable to do photosynthesis because this cup did not have a source of carbon. Thank you for joining me today learning about photosynthesis. If you'd like to see some more fun science videos, you should join us at craftlakecity.com.